Lane Kiffin finally lands, and it's in Bayou country. We'll tell you how it went down right here. We have been talking about the Lane Kiffin situation for some time. We're going to get into how the process played out. We're not going to go through every detail. That'd be an hour-long show. We're going to give you the thumbnail sketch of what happened. We've kind of given you a little bit of an idea and a hint on how things were going. We're going to take you through the whole process right now. Thanks to today's sponsor, Quantum Energy Squares. Get 25% off using our link, which is pinned below in the comments. You've heard the saying, timing's everything. In coaching searches, haven't been involved in them. It's when they happen, the timing, obviously the situation. For example, if Florida had decided to make a move with Billy Napier last year, Lane Kiffin would be the coach at Florida. If LSU had better success and Brian Kelly was doing a better job, Lane Kiffin would be the coach at Florida today. It didn't happen that way. We told you from the beginning that Florida, many people jumped the gun. We told you that Florida was in good position until the LSU job came open. Once the LSU job came open, Florida was not an afterthought, but it wasn't going to happen for them. No, many of you disagreed. There's a difference between having sources and having the source. It just wasn't going to happen. That's not what Lane and Jimmy Sexton, who represented Lane, that's their research and what they thought was the best job. It was the LSU job. You don't have to agree with that. Doesn't matter. What anybody thinks, it only matters, as I say, what the candidates think. Once the LSU job came open, this was a job that Lane wanted. And it was just a matter of how things would work out. I have felt for a while that it was going to be a lean to LSU. But I always felt, and this is mainly the coach in me that thought, how can you leave a team that's going to the playoffs? And so I always thought that might be something that it's easy to say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for that better job. But man, I just can't leave my team. That was the only thing that had a chance, which is why, as you know, Florida backed out of it when they knew they weren't in it. In Ole Miss, I think the Ole Miss administration knew when they met a week ago Friday that he was going to leave. But there was hopes that maybe he would change his mind. The emotion of getting ready for the Egg Bowl, winning the Egg Bowl, maybe that would be enough. When he didn't commit to them that day, and then he didn't commit to them after the Egg Bowl, look, he's had a extension offer on his desk for weeks. It says a lot. We all knew inside the coaching search world that it was LSU unless he had that last-minute change of heart. We told you, we did a podcast. Can Ole Miss and Florida flip him? Well, that was the rhetorical question. And what could they do? Again, many people thought, well, they don't have to flip him. Yeah, they did. Because LSU was where he was headed unless he changed his mind, and it was only going to be to Ole Miss. Look, I don't, in terms of sources, I'm not smart enough to just listen to secondhand information, which is where most people get their stuff, media types and what have you. I go to the source on both sides, and that's also part of the problem. So I think a lot of the Florida folks, well, yeah, the Florida media is telling you, because their sources at Florida tell them, yeah, we think we're in good shape. Well, because the agent on behalf of the candidate is telling me, oh, yeah, we're interested. Yeah, we're interested. You're still in it. Yeah. They got to hedge their bets. But if you don't look at it from all sides, if you had done your homework and looking at it from all sides, you would have known yeah, Florida's telling me this, but, they're also getting that somewhere else that is also interested there. So, look, it's naivete, delusional maybe, is maybe too strong, but that's the difference between, hey, knowing what's truly going on and what you want to go on. Kiffin coached the Egg Bowl to fortify Ole Miss's playoff bid. And he would have coached the SEC championship game as well. If Auburn had beaten Alabama, he'd be coaching, and we'd be going through another week. And next week, after the SEC championship game, we'd be having the same conversation just a week later. He was not going to coach the playoffs because Ole Miss wasn't going to let him, despite Kiffin's effort to convince him. So the plan all along for Lane, he wanted to coach this team to conclusion. I think he had to know that wasn't going to happen, but in his heart of hearts, he was trying to convince his athletic director and his president that that's the best thing to do. They felt like, hey, you're going to be the coach at LSU. Go be the coach at LSU. You're not going to coach here. Keith Carter knew last Friday that he was gone when he didn't commit to staying. Now, here's the thing I always say, and I always tell administrators. Always be prepared for the worst case scenario. You don't know what's going to happen. You could have tragedies. Anything could happen. Ole Miss was not prepared beyond Lane Kiffin, and they should have been. It's the reason why they placated him, because they didn't have any other option, and we'll get into that in a little bit more, how they ended up making their hire yesterday. Backed into a corner. They should have done more due diligence and tried to secure John Summerall. Obviously work with the agent. Look, this is what we're trying to do, but we're very interested if that doesn't work out. Florida, to their credit, may have gotten the best hire of them all in John Summerall. Florida was smart. As an administration, realized they did everything they could. They didn't do anything wrong in their pursuit of Lane Kiffin. A lot of people say, well, they interviewed general managers and all. That was before Lane had, shown the significant interest in them. They were not going to hire a general manager for Lane Kiffin. I know that's been reported. That was not going to be the case. They've hired a general manager to pair up with John Summerall. I know the general manager very well. But that wasn't going to be the case with Lane Kiffin. That may be the only thing that they maybe overreached a little bit on. It's not their fault. Lane just thinks that the LSU job's a better job. Ole Miss was too late on Summerall. And then they tried to get in on Alex Golish, but was again too late because Auburn, who wanted John Summerall, didn't do a very good job in their process, basically almost forcing DJ Durkin on Summerall's staff. Well, it's not that Summerall didn't like DJ Durkin as defensive coordinator, but when they start to dictate to you who's going to be on your staff, that's a negative sign. It's typically Auburn, and I have said here how a good of a job that Auburn was doing. They didn't finish well. When you show that you're going to manipulate or force things, then it becomes a less attractive job because, again, it says if they're doing this before I get hired, what are they going to do after I get hired? So Auburn pivoted to Alex Golish and was further down the line, so Ole Miss really couldn't get into that. And by the way, we know that Arkansas thought they had Alex Golish, but Alex held off, didn't give him a commitment because he knew from his agent there might be something a little better. And so Arkansas was kind of left holding the bag there. We'll get into that. Ole Miss, knowing that they lost Lane Kiffin, and they're going to lose the bulk of their offensive staff, although there's a chance that a couple of them may stay through the playoffs, they were backed into a corner. Their candidates were off the board. Pete Golding was not going to stay at Ole Miss as a defensive coordinator. He had an opportunity to join John Summerall at Florida as a defense coordinator. He could have He could have certainly been on the staff at LSU. LSU wants to keep Blake Baker. It looks like Blake Baker is going to stay at LSU as the defensive coordinator. I think the head coaching job at Tulane is something we may need to look out for, but I think he is interested in staying. So Pete Golding wasn't going to stay at Ole Miss as a defensive coordinator. I can tell you that. Talk to Pete. He felt like if you're not comfortable in making me the head coach, not interim, but the head coach, then there's no reason for me to stay. Well, Ole Miss, losing a big chunk of their offensive staff potentially, didn't want to lose the whole team and wanted to keep the defensive staff together. And really, at this point, not a better option than Pete Golding. So that's how that played out. Keep in mind that Ole Miss is not just preparing for their future. It's an unusual situation that Ole Miss is in. I feel bad for them in a lot of ways, because when you have a coaching change, it normally is because it's not worked, you moved on. You clean house in many cases. But Ole Miss is not just trying to prepare for the future in 26, they're trying to hold on for a playoff run. Lane Kiffin is going to be raked over the coals, and look, it's the way it is. It's I know he's bothered by it to some degree, but I don't think he lets it bother him as much as most people do. Why did Lane want LSU over Ole Miss? I've talked with Lane throughout the process. I know he's talked to Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, plenty of other friends in coaching. Here's the bottom line from a coaching viewpoint. As a fan, you can think something else. As a media person, you can think something else. Everyone says things like, well, you can win just as easy as at Ole Miss as you can at LSU today. Wrong. It's a better chance for Ole Miss with what Lane has, the infrastructure that he's put in. They've got a better chance of being successful with the NIL and the portal system along with the 12-team playoff. At Ole Miss, the only way, Lane does not want to be the portal king. He doesn't want to get it done through the portal because that's not sustainable. There are going to be years where that's going to fall apart. Look at Florida State. They almost made a run at a national championship when they hit it on the portal, and then they've flopped ever since. I'm not saying that was going to happen with Lane, but he knew that it was hit or miss. The only way that Ole Miss can get 5 stars is getting them from other colleges, because getting them out of high school is not something heretofore they've been able to do. Maybe that changes, but they've not been able to do that. They have to go and get them from another school that for whatever reason, they didn't get enough playing time, what have you, they move on, you can get them there. At LSU, you can get 5-star players out of high school. You can develop your system around those players. And then, as everyone will, you will lose certain players. But you can complement the guys that leave with portal guys. Instead of building it around the portal, you can complement it with the portal and build it through recruiting. It's the reason why LSU has won national championships, because of talent. Nick Saban brought great talent. Les Miles and Ed Orgeron will never be confused as great coaches, but they had great talent, and they put together a staff well enough to make it work. Maybe not sustainable for them, but the fact that it's been done at LSU consistently is a difference. It doesn't matter what's happening today. Ole Miss hasn't won a championship in 60 years. It's going to be more difficult for them. Not impossible, but it's going to be more difficult. Ole Miss is understandably upset. They don't see themselves as inferior to an LSU, for example. And they shouldn't think of themselves as inferior. But the reality is, in the coaching world, coaches see the difference between LSU and Ole Miss. LSU is a top 3 to 5 job nationally. if you rank the top jobs in the SEC, 3 to 5, Ole Miss is not in the top 3 to 5 in the SEC. It's a very good job, but by SEC standards, not a top tier job. That may not be how you see it as a fan. Because, again, fans only see, well, what's happening now? If it's so much better, why is Ole Miss beating them? Because LSU and Florida, for example, are not doing a very good job. That's why they fired their coaches. You win 9 games a year at Ole Miss, you've got more stability at Ole Miss because they're not going to fire you for winning 9 games or 10 games. They'll fire you at Florida or LSU if you only win 9 or 10 games and you don't go further. Lane is getting a lot of criticism from Ole Miss fans. I get it. But now you're getting the almost ridiculous stuff. The same people that were praising Lane Kiffin for building their program are now saying he's the devil, just like the Tennessee fans. We're going to be better without Kiffin. Okay, we'll see. Maybe you will. But did you really think that a few weeks ago? If so, why didn't you, let's fire Kiffin and promote Pete Golding? Because you didn't think that. You think of it now. He's going to get killed, and his personality has a lot to do with it. There's a lot of things about Lane, and I know him really well. He's his own worst enemy. But if he's such a bad guy, why did Ole Miss try to keep him? Why did Florida try to hire him? Why did Auburn try to hire him a few years ago? Now, it's been reported that, Kiffin said he was going to take his staff. I spoke with Keith Carter. I spoke with the coaches at Ole Miss. They dispute the fact that they were given an ultimatum. I don't know. I wasn't there. But media reports say one thing. I think it's coming out of the Ole Miss side. The bottom line is Lane has to move on, build his team. He wanted to coach it. He couldn't. I do think he's doing his best to try to make himself the martyr. Can't do that. You made a decision. I also think that it's rich when people try to farm other people's land. Well, he should have stayed. In your opinion, it's not you. Kurt Cignetti, I think it's great that he stayed at Indiana, but if he wanted to go to Penn State, look, I get it. It's a bad system, the bad calendar. It's got to be corrected. But in his situation, I can tell you Lane struggled with it. But the reality is, he didn't want to sit there, pass over an LSU opportunity with the idea that, maybe it'll come around in a few years. His family, young family, is going to grow up. They're going to be out of school. And he's going to be in Oxford knowing that, in his mind, he's done as much as he can do. That's how he felt. Lane Kiffin was not allowed to talk to his team. Keith Carter said, I don't want you to do that. But again, some people criticize him. Well, he didn't have the guts to talk to his team. No, he was told not to. It's Ole Miss's administration's business. Time will tell how well he's going to do and how well he'll be accepted locally, regionally, and nationally. Probably not going to be good. Winning cures all that. I'll say this. LSU is in a much stronger program today than it was before a few days ago. Ole Miss is weaker. They're not as good without Lane Kiffin in my mind. If you don't believe from an Ole Miss standpoint, the Ole Miss program is better for having Lane Kiffin and the infrastructure that he and others put together. He got Ole Miss to credibility. I think he felt like he did all he can do. It remains to be seen if Pete Golding can keep this program at a close or same level. Of course, as we mentioned, the domino coaching cycle fell as we thought it would when Lane made his decision. Florida did a good job rallying and getting John Summerall. Auburn did a good job of after basically, I think they may have had a shot to convince Summerall to take it before Florida pulled out, but they didn't do as good a job in that process, but jumped on Alex Golesh and got a good one as well. I know Arkansas fans are not happy with Ryan Silverfield. I think he's a good coach and, quite frankly, as good as they can do at this point. Look, at the end of the day, it's going to be something that's going to bring a lot of controversy. I get it. I personally think that Lane Kiffin can do great things at LSU. He's going to have to modify, not change, modify some of the things he does to make his offense complement the defense more. You know, you can't be concerned about style points and scoring 50 a game, sometimes scoring 35 and having your defense on the field for 15, 18 less snaps. That's championship football. That's going to allow you to win multiple ways, because what happens if your offense is off kilter a given day? I think we saw Lane last year at Ole Miss mainly win because of their defense. The offense will be fixed with Lane. Recruiting, play calling, play design, the schematics will be really good on that side of the ball. I do think some of the emphasis on slowing the pace down at times, running the football well, and allowing your defense with better personnel, as you can have better personnel on that side of the ball at LSU, can allow them to be great. Look, I recommended, I know they wanted Lane Kiffin, and I'm great with it. But my job with LSU was to provide analysis like I do with other schools of coaches. There's a couple of other coaches that I thought would have been great, and I thought would have been really good fits. That's what you have to do to be prepared, because there is always the possibility that Lane could have changed his mind. LSU's fortunate that they didn't have to go down that path. Appreciate all of you joining us. Hit the subscribe button. Help us grow. Like talking football with you, providing some inside information, giving you a feel from a coaching and scouting viewpoint, which is a little different. You can have a different view as a fan. That's fine. That's what makes us a little different, and that's what we want to do here. Hit the subscribe button. It's free. Help us keep it free by hitting the subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything, and it'll allow us to keep bringing you the football information. We'll break down some of the other coaching analysis in the days and weeks to come, as well as breaking down everything. Love to get into the pure football stuff, but we'll do that coming forward. Appreciate you joining us. Talk to you again next time, everybody.